Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another GitBook webinar. Super excited for this one. We're going to get started in about 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes. Feel free to introduce yourself in the comments. Let us know where you're streaming in from. Say hello. We'll get started in just a minute. Some quick logistics on this as well. We do record all of these sessions and we do host these on gitbook.com/events. So if you have to drop off, you can always head there to find them afterwards. And they're also on our YouTube as well. Hello to everyone new coming in. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of really exciting things to cover. Let me stop the music here. So for all of you who are piling in, hello, and welcome back to another GitBook webinar. We're really excited for this one. I'm joined by Karthik from n8n, and we're going to be diving into documentation practices and take a look at n8n's workflow specifically on how they run their docs on GitBook. So if you haven't been to one of our webinars before, my name's Addison. I work on our developer relations team and do a lot of our webinars. You might have seen me before, but I'm super excited to be joined by Karthik. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me, Addison. Hello, everyone. My name is Karthik Balasubramanian. I'm the lead technical writer at n8n. I've been here for about a year, but my experience spans primarily tech writing, a lot of information architecture, some UX design. So I worked at large firms like IBM and MathWorks, but also smaller startups that went on to have like pretty good exits. So very excited for what we've got here in terms of collaboration with GitBook. So very excited to share what we've got.
Yes, we're super excited to have you here. And for those of you who are just joining in, again, just some housekeeping notes. We do record these sessions. We'll post them on gitbook.com/events. We also have some of the GitBook team inside of the comments. So if you have any questions for me, for Karthik, about n8n, about GitBook, feel free to drop them into the comments and we'll have some people from our team helping out there. But a quick agenda, we'll take a look at a few different things here, but we've just gone through some introductions and welcome, but we'll take a look at why docs go stale and take a look at kind of the problem that a lot of docs teams are facing. And then we'll go ahead and hand it over to Karthik, and he'll run us through the n8n workflow and how they run their docs on GitBook and how they manage all of these different updates, especially in today's age when teams are making updates to the product what feels like almost every hour. Things can get buried, specifically updates to your docs. So we're going to take a look at how they keep their docs up to date end-to-end using n8n as well. We'll also dive into some of the new GitBook tools that we offer to help you manage a lot of these updates and keep your company's knowledge on your docs up to date with all of the things that are going around. We'll then dive into some takeaways and finish up with a Q&A. So like I said, we do have some of the GitBook team here in the chat. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to post them right away, and we'll do our best to answer you. Otherwise, you can leave them towards the end, and we'll try to answer as many as we can live at the end. But let's go ahead and let's dive into it. So the first thing that we want to talk about is why docs go stale. And the big thesis and theme here that we're trying to cover is that documentation is oftentimes one of the first things that users see and interact with a product, but a lot of times is the last thing that teams keep up to date. And with all of this stuff around automation and AI, we're finally going to take a look at how a lot of teams like n8n are closing that gap. Because there's triggers everywhere. There's things like pull requests in your product, support tickets that are coming in about things that are broken in the product or workflows that aren't working, questions that people are asking in the docs that aren't answered. And all of these are different signals that essentially are useful for teams when they hit the documentation that might not be available for them if your docs aren't up to date. So basically, why are they getting lost? And they get lost for a number of different reasons, but one of the main reasons is that things are shipping so fast that a lot of teams don't have a lot of the infrastructure or automation to keep the documentation up to date. And manual docs updates do sound pretty good off the top of mind, but if your system is really busy and you don't have a lot of manpower to basically keep up on these updates, like I said, they get lost. They get lost pretty quickly. So we're going to take a look at, again, the workflows in kind of two different lenses. We'll take a look at the automation from n8n side, how they turn kind of real world signals and workflows from all these different tools into documentation updates. And then we'll also take a look at the tooling aspect of it as well, and take a look at some of the specific features that GitBook has to help you and your team manage these updates as well, so you can start to build a system that works for your team. But without further ado, let's go ahead and let's show some demos, because I think a lot of people here are pretty excited to see how this works specifically. So give me a sec. I'm going to hand this over to you, Karthik, and the stage is yours.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks so much for handing this over. So I think what the point that Addison's making is probably painfully familiar to all of the tech writers in the room, right? And one common theme is that we are often not in the rooms where the decisions are made on shipping features, or where things are finalized, where UX is sort of finalized. We often hear about it after the fact. We hear it in PRs and like Slack channels, conversations. So signals is really indeed the right sort of operative word here, right? So I'm going to show you two sort of examples of how we're kind of dealing with all the noise here, and this is part of a larger plan that we have on how to process all of the signals that the tech docs team receives. We are a fairly small team with a very large mandate. So I'm going to show you two of these examples. So the first one that I'm going to show you is just GitHub Health, right? I don't know how many of you know this, but our n8n docs are publicly available on our n8n docs repo in GitHub. And we source contributions not just from writers and internal engineers and product managers, but also from the community. So we have people who are users of n8n, coming in, creating PRs, finding issues in the docs, bugs, gaps, documenting new features even. And one common theme that we find there is that because both the code as well as the docs are public, people can actually contribute code to the n8n code base as well, right? And oftentimes they will submit a piece of code to the code base and create a companion doc, a PR in our docs repo. So already you can see some divergence here, because until their primary PR doesn't get merged into the main repo, we can't really process it on the doc side, right? So I'll show you one one sort of big workflow that we're using to just maintain hygiene and kind of figure out what to and how to process a lot of these contributions that come in. So I hear a lot of you saying we need to zoom in. Yeah, that's totally the intention. Just give me a second. All right, so this is a kind of a largish workflow. So it all starts with, so if you're unfamiliar with n8n, n8n is basically an automation platform that converts all your business logic into automated workflows that run on the cloud. There are primarily 3 or 4 main sequences that happen inside a workflow. One is a trigger or a signal, which you see here. The center part of the main part of a workflow is the business logic, which is something happens, some data flows in. Now you want to process that data using some business logic that is very germane to what you're trying to do in your organization. And then the last portion is basically, once you process the data, you want to maybe broadcast it. It could be a Slack message, email, it could be a GitHub PR that goes back into your source code. So what we have here is our way of maintaining the sanity, of maintaining our sanity in our GitHub repo, because we get so many contributions. So this is basically a tagging a workflow. Every time there's a PR that's submitted to the n8n docs repo, we check whether it's open. And if it is indeed open, it branches into 3 types. We check if it's a bot. So we have our own bot, which kind of just looks at automatable content and generates content and creates PRs for us. If it's a bot, then we try to assess if it's from n8n automation or from the docs team. And it just adds a label to that PR, and it says this has been authored by the doc team. And if it's by a community, then it flags it as a community contribution. And what you see here is when we come into GitHub every morning, we can basically look at our list of PRs that we need to review, because all of them have been clearly labeled as and when PRs flow in. The second one is what is the example that I was talking about, where someone created a PR in the main repo of n8n and created its companion docs PR in our repo. And in that case, we look for the main repo, see if it's been linked to something in the main repo, and get the status of the main repo's contribution. So if it hasn't been merged into a main n8n repo, we can't really merge the docs in. And so we put like a status pending dev on it. And that's an indication to us to say that this doc PR is not ready for review. So it's not top of mind when we come in and look at it every morning. And the third one is anything that's automated by the PMM team. So we have a product marketing team that manages all our change logs. So essentially, you can call them change logs, release notes. Every team calls them a slightly different name. But the change log is essentially contributed by product managers and then edited by product marketing managers. So there are two different parties, both of them interacting within the GitHub repo, and we as doc team members oversee that interaction. So those are also flagged. When some of these PRs come in, they are flagged as a changelog PR. It gets routed to the actual marketing team that's going to be reviewing it. And this is their Slack message that you see that goes out and tells them that this is how they need to process it. So that's one of our operational sort of workflows. And
Wow, it sounds like you have quite a few different places that a lot of these updates are kind of coming from in a lot of different ways.
That's right. I think what makes it challenging is just the flavor of things, right? Some of them are just very sort of in processing some of these PRs, it's very clear what the decision should be. It's either an approve or reject or something. But then there are others where you might need to have some feedback, which is where all the Slack notifications or emails sort of notifications kind of help a lot.
Very, very, very cool.
All right. And there's one other workflow that I want to show that might be a little more relevant to content automation. I'm going to share that. Let me know if you can see a much wider workflow. Yeah. All right. Okay. So the problem here is that we have a set of docs in our doc set, which are called environment variable docs. So we've got about 200, 250 environment variables in an n8n install, and they're all essentially levers for enabling or disabling various features, changing the parameters of an existing feature, right? Think of these almost as like feature flags, but a little more intrusive in the sense that they will really modify your environment to be more useful for certain aspects. All of these are defined in TypeScript files in the source code, in the n8n source code, and they change all the time, right? So they're essentially reference docs, but people use them all the time to modify their environment, customize it to their particular needs. So it's fairly important to keep them updated as best as possible. So there are two parts to this workflow, right? In order for this workflow to run correctly, doc writers have to be able to go into the source code and edit a lot of the doc strings that define these variables, right? So that's the first thing that we did. We went into the source code, we edited all the doc strings in these TypeScript files. But then once they're there, then we wanted to automate the generation of these files, right? So that they're always current. So this workflow runs on a weekly schedule. It looks at all files where environment variables are defined. So there are two branches here because there are two code paths on which these environment variables can be defined. Sometimes they're defined as config files. Sometimes they're defined as config files inside package folders. So slightly different variations there. Once we get all the files that are affected, we create a mega list, which is this merge node. We get only TypeScript files, which is a filter node. And we get the config file content from within these files, which is basically reading the file and reading the contents. Once you get that, we are extracting the environment variables from here and storing it in Supabase. If you're familiar with Supabase, it's a massive non-relation database. It's table-wise storage of data that you can retrieve very quickly. So what we have at the end of this process is this massive table of all environment variables with their definitions and data types and default values. Then the second workflow, which I can actually run and show you what happens, reads from that Supabase database. Then we have some JavaScript code in here that then converts all that information to a markdown file. So if I went ahead and just executed this, It's reading the superbase table, and it's converting all these. So you've got like 53 files generated like in a few seconds, right? Like I ran it in real time. And if I were to tap into this and view one of these files, this is just classic markdown table, right? So it took, so what this workflow gives us is it takes all of the content that's stored inside the source code, formatted in Markdown, and ready for a PR, essentially. The only missing piece is is essentially creating a PR in our GitHub repo that updates all these files with the latest content.
This is super, super interesting. I actually have a few questions, actually two main ones kind of like on the workflow that you have. So the first is, and I think both of these will be really interesting for people who are using n8n or also people who are using GitBook or any docs platform for that matter. Can you talk a little bit about like the setup that your team is using? Because it sounds like a lot of these updates are starting from GitHub and then are filtering down to GitBook. Would you say that GitHub is more of your source of truth for a lot of these updates that are coming through?
I think in primarily the reason why we source a lot of these or route a lot of these changes through GitHub is the community, right? Because we've got a massive community of people contributing. I want to say about 20 to 30% of our contributions every month, PRs, are community contributions, which is a fairly large number. And we want to keep GitHub open to the community. So we run these workflows through into GitHub, and so that the community can get we're doing it transparently. We're doing it in the presence of our customers. They can get a sense of it. But what GitBook does for us is it takes away all the so we are focused entirely on strategy, on content strategy, content, how to structure content, how to manage large volumes of content and moving things around, structuring pages and things like that, and the analytics, right? So if you thought about it in the classic sort of tech writing sort of structure, all of this work would be a couple of people, like you'd have to hire, you'd have to train them, and you're managing a massive tool chain of some sort of static site generation plus cloud tools and like analytics tools are together. With GitBook, all of that hassle goes away, right? Like everything, all of that heavy lifting is done by GitBook. Our UI requires barely any maintenance because GitBook just generates something that's clean and very easy to manage and manipulate. And it gives us a lot of these analytics out of the box, so we don't have to basically write an analytics tool chain on top of the structure, right? The other great thing with GitBook is that we are able to, even though our contributions are routed through GitHub for some of these changes, these automatable changes, we get live previews inside the PR. So when we create these, when we submit these PRs through to GitHub, because GitBook and GitHub are linked together and are syncing constantly, as soon as the PR's initial checks are all run, GitBook basically generates an instantaneous preview of all the pages that were changed, right? So even if it's a community contribution, we're finding that all of our contributors are really impressed that they can just click a button and just see what their changes will look like. Previously, it was like with static site generators, you have to basically run the entire build, a whole bunch of checks that can take anywhere from minutes, sometimes 2-3 minutes, right? And with GitBook, it's instantaneous.
Yeah, super cool. And I was definitely curious about the community aspect of it because, like you said, there's a huge amount of changes that are coming in from your community. So having this automation and definitely the platforms to back it up and run everything smoothly is going to be super important. The other question I had, which I think is going to be interesting for a lot of teams who are also going a lot more towards this like automated workflow of not only merging in changes but generating a lot of these changes as well, is what does your role and your team's role kind of evolve into, or what does it start to look like? Maybe even like a sneak peek into your day when you log in and take a look at your docs. I think that'd be pretty interesting for a lot of the people on the call.
Yeah, so I can share that in a bit, but I think our role is rapidly evolving into that of content orchestrators, right? And we're no longer authoring content from scratch. So there's always a signal, and I'm going to continue using the signal because signal is kind of it's a term that's broadly applicable to various sources of changes that you will notice in the docs, or will influence changes in the docs. Our role basically becomes processing signals and pointing them to the right place, right? In our world usually starts with, I'm going to bring up our docs repo, because that'll give you a good sense of what this looks like. Let me know when you see our GitHub repo.
Yep, it looks like
brilliant.
it's up.
Okay, brilliant. So this is basically our world. Every day we come in and we are basically looking at these labels here, right? And these are all doc team, but then there's some internal contributions. And our primary focus is on these needs review ones, because everything else is just in progress. Our workflow takes care of understanding which one needs review. So this reduces a subset of things that we need to do per day. And we just come in and look at these yellow sort of items. Once we're in, we're looking at a few things here. So we have AI and basically automation kind of embedded into everything that we do here at n8n. So we get like an AI summary of what's changed. We first look for any big changes that are happening. So we'll probably pop in to some of the actual changes that are happening inside these files, and then pop back over into the conversation. And one thing that's usually useful is having some of these previews here, because then we can actually open one of these up, and I'm going to bring up what this page would look like in our docs, right? So you can basically visualize how this change that happened in GitHub in a repo, which is kind of not, it's not immediately apparent how that change impacts the entire page. We can quickly come in here and take a look at this thing, and see if it fits into the page, if the page still flows well, and then we can go back and provide some more constructive feedback to the author. So this is a large part of our work a day. Like it takes up like 20-30% of our day, just processing some of these PRs that come in. Another big part is learning about other things that are happening within the company. So like tech writing teams, they tend to be small, they tend to be spread thin. And so you always have to, like we've historically relied on our alliances in various groups, like in engineering, a product, and everything, and UX, and like learning about what changed. But now with automation, we can basically feed all that information to us. So we've got one massive Slack channel. I can't bring that up because there's some proprietary information in there, but then we've got this one massive Slack channel that just hits us with updates and kind of does like a concise sort of summary of all the big things that we need to look at every day, right? We've got a bot, it's called DocFather, and the bot just basically looks at all our signals and just processes it and sends it to us. We've got some more automation that talks about that. So we've got PRs that need attention in terms of review. Another set that we look at very carefully is PRs that are aging. Like it's been a while, it's been more than 7 days. I'm gonna take a look at it. And the third part is analytics. So a lot of the analytics that we get from GitBook, we are assessing it strategically. So page, some of the page views, what are the most popular pages, and particularly when we push out a change to a page, we track the analytics to see if anything changed in terms of traffic to that page, any sort of questions that came in.
Yeah, super nice. And I'll also show, I think, in just a little bit in the next demo, what that kind of looks like in GitBook for those that aren't super familiar. And one last kind of question then was also asking you a little bit more about your workflow if you are writing docs, if that's something you're doing a lot nowadays. And with n8n being so heavily influenced as an AI tool and AI company, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about like some of your own workflows and using AI, whether it's like creating content, how you're getting that into these PRs for them to be reviewed and added.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be great.
Yeah, so we've got fairly good, so I don't know how many people have heard of this tool called Linear. And so Linear is like Jira, it's like a project management tool. Just like Jira has tickets, Linear has issues, projects and initiatives. You kind of group things into various things, right? Into various buckets. So we have pretty good linear hygiene in that the engineering teams are very good at creating all these linear issues, tracking their work. Linear issues are linked to corresponding PRs in the main n8n repo, right? So when a doc, the protocol that we have here is if an engineer thinks even kind of is uncertain whether something needs docs, we encourage them to just flag something as needs docs, and that creates a corresponding issue in our space, in our project. So from there, it's all basically automation. So we have an n8n workflow that basically looks at our issue, it looks at the docs issue, and then it looks at it tracks the corresponding engineering PR, a linear issue, tracks down the change in the source code that is tracked by this issue. And then we have in our docs repo, you'll find some style rules, we'll find some skills that you can use, that an agent can use. So you get the raw content from the code repo. You get the skills that define how they should be shaped into docs that match our style, our guidelines. And then we get a draft, right? And the draft is usually, again, the DocFather usually sends us the draft, which we can review and then create a PR, right? So all of this basically happens within a few minutes, as opposed to like taking hours of trying to coordinate where the source code change happened. It's also what I find useful when you're requesting reviews from SMEs, because then you can tell them in your PR, you can indicate which part of the source code you reviewed in order to get this information. Yeah, so they can then go to the same piece of code and say, yeah, you're indeed right, or need some more information.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And hearing all of these different workflows, like they all surround a very common theme that we're seeing a lot with a lot of docs teams as well. It's like the signals, and then also the guidelines, like having skills that write different things, and then the integrations to make everything possible, whether that's like an automation like n8n or any other built-in tools. But the cool part about AI is that it really opens up like a lot of possibilities, and a lot of teams, including n8n and GitBook, are becoming a lot more open in the sense that it's very easy to integrate with many different workflows, which is again kind of why we wanted to bring you on and hear more about like your experience, because when you can do so many things integration wise, it's really useful to hear what a team like n8n is doing specifically, that works obviously very, very well.
One sort of side effect that I've seen, like a positive side effect of this sort of automation plus AI plus tools like GitBook, all right, that help you move faster and at a more predictable pace. I think that's what's important, right? Like it's not just about moving fast and breaking things. It's very, very predictable. Your outputs are very predictable. You can maintain a high sense of quality. The one happy side effect is that it frees you up to become a product expert in the product that you're documenting, right? It helps you. Initially, you might have been in one small area of a product, becoming an expert in one particular aspect, but you can expand that knowledge over time, and you can kind of grow. So that's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Before we hop into the next part of the demos, I do see actually a reoccurring question that might be interesting if you would be able to talk about it now. But it seems like some people are interested in the DocFather setup that the team has. Maybe you could talk even just a little bit about what it is again and how your team uses it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on. I'll actually show you what one of the DocFather things does. There you go. So I'm going to show you what this is. One. So the DocFather is one agent that does many things. It's like
one sec. I don't know if we can see your screen if you're sharing something.
Not yet. Should be here now.
Okay. Yeah. We see the n8n workflow.
Yeah. So DocFather is this name that we have for this one super agent that's constantly keeping an ear to the ground, looking at all the signals that are coming through. So this one branch of DocFather is just looking at linear issues, right? It's just tracking what's changed in linear and kind of processing them. So what it does is it looks for an issue, see if it has a linear ticket. If it's not, there's no linear ticket. It fetches the content. So this is what's happening here is if you have a change that was made in the code base, right? It fetches the change in the code base, figures out what doc content needs to change as a result of this, and then actually proposes this. So gets the head from the n8n docs repo, creates a branch, gets the file that needs to change because of the corresponding code change, creates a commit body, which is basically saying take this content that I've generated for you, insert it into this large markdown file, commit the file, create the PR, And this update job row is just we maintain a massive table of all the files that were affected, and so this just goes and updates. Again, it's super base, so it just goes and updates the actual row that is affected. So this is an example where we take a signal that have originated in the code and actually make the change in the docs.
And what other kind of signals is the DocFather processing?
So we've
if there are
got
a few other ones. I love the name,
so,
by the way. It's great.
Yeah, that's our, like, basically we've got an architect basically in our team whose role is just thinking of automations. So he's been amazing with our stuff. So this another one that's really popular with us is we want to get metrics. So we use Kappa for our search, Kappa AI for our conversation search, and Kappa has a dashboard of all things of all our trends. So let me see if I can get you because I can't share the actual thing. Let me see if I can just share one sort of readout from the DocFather, and that might be helpful to illustrate what I'll.
Yeah, feel free to post it in the chat or read it off here if you're able to.
Yeah, I'll bring it back up, but let's keep the conversation going. I'll look for another example that I can just I'll post a screenshot or something that we can share.
Yeah. No problem. And yeah, for everyone in the chat and in the webinar, if you have more questions about this, feel free to post them. Like I said, we'll do a live Q&A at the end. So if there's something specific that you want to see, feel free to just post it in here, and we'll try to get to it afterwards. But yeah, let's move on to some of the other parts of the demo. One sec. And talk about a little bit about some of the pieces of GitBook that help you also automate a lot of things, a lot of the pieces that also make it possible for n8n to run some of these workflows and these automations. I want to break the features that I'm about to kind of demo and show down into kind of 4 different areas that I think are really relevant to what Karthik was saying and what a lot of docs teams are facing right now. And it comes down to a lot of like signals and other pieces that are happening across companies that are really important for docs to read from and to update from. So the first one I want to talk about is the concept of feedback from your docs. And this can come in the form of a number of different things. It can come in the form of insights from people who are asking questions to your docs. It can come in the form of analytics to different pages, if they're getting upvoted, downvoted, the number of broken links. It's basically just all of this data that your docs platform should be able to give you that help you make informed decisions on how to update your docs. The second piece is really focused on agents, but it's basically the ability to make said updates in your docs platform. We have a piece in GitBook called channels, but a lot of teams, including GitBook, we also have an MCP server, a CLI, or even using these automations through tools like n8n and the GitHub integration with GitBook. So you're able to make these updates using whatever tool that you're comfortable using or maybe have enabled for your organization very easily in your docs platform. The third one is what I'm going to call kind of guardrails, which is also what Karthik was mentioning before. It's things like a style guide or maybe agent skills that the AI is able to read and reference and make sure it follows when it's making these updates. So these updates are very structured and they follow set guidelines basically for your docs, so you can be comfortable that the updates that they're making are going to be good ones. And the last one is kind of similar to feedback, but it's almost signals. And the reason that I call it signals and is different from docs feedback is because there's signals across your company that are happening that are also important to your docs. Not only, again, traffic to your docs and questions on your docs, but signals like pull requests that we talked about, product updates, even support questions that are happening, again, outside and agnostic of what's going on in your docs, but are happening in your company's operations. But all of these things are very, very useful and very important for your docs. As I mentioned before, like documentation is one of the first things that a lot of teams and people are reading when they're coming into your product. So it's the notion of creating a great system that incorporates all of these different signals and feedback and agents into a system that works to help basically help you instead of work against you. So I just want to share very quickly. We do have a few webinars on some of the features that I'm going to show, so I'm not going to dive in super deep into a lot of these features. Again, head to gitbook.com/events or our YouTube, and you'll find re-recordings of a lot of these features where we do a deep dive. But the first one that I want to talk about is this feedback aspect of it. So again, how can you take a look at the feedback that's coming in to your documentation specifically? And in GitBook, we have two main features that are really useful for this. You would find it underneath the Analyze section in your doc site if you're working, again, in GitBook. The first one, again, is analytics. So you'll be able to see a list of different types of analytics like traffic, pages and feedback, what agents and LLMs are accessing your docs. And like I said, all of these is good feedback for you to make informed decisions on, something that Karthik was saying as well that he uses when he's making docs updates and things that he incorporates into the decisions that are going on when you're making these updates. The second big piece was something that we released earlier this year, which is also super useful. But AI in a search and assistant aspect for docs platforms is also becoming very, very useful. We have a built-in AI assistant in GitBook. There's also other platforms like Karthik was mentioned. You'll see it on the n8n docs called Kappa. But a lot of these tools give you a lot of insights into what people are asking and how well the AI assistant is able to answer these questions. And these are also really great signals of feedback on how your docs could be better, because if people are asking a lot of questions about a specific topic that isn't able to be answered by your AI, you obviously know that there's some updates that probably need to be done in your documentation, architecture, or even the content itself. With the AI insights that GitBook has, we basically have a full list that you can dive into to see what types of topics people are asking about, their answer rate, and dive into the questions specifically to really nail down and see, is this something that needs to be updated? How can we fix this in our docs so people are either asking less of this question or they're being answered more? The second thing that I wanted to talk about is something called, again, agents, but it's just the ability to make these changes inside of whatever your docs platform is. Again, in GitBook, we have a couple different tools for this very easily with an agent or from external tools. We have a new feature that we released, and again, we did a webinar on this a few weeks ago called Channels. And this is basically allowing you to use the GitBook agent, the GitBook writing AI writer in many different tools like Slack, GitHub, and Linear. So if you are using these tools and you're using GitBook but don't have like a whole automation workflow yet set up, this is a really quick way that you can add the GitBook AI into these different tools and have it work with you to create these changes. You can basically just tag it in Slack, GitHub, or Linear and say, hey, can you create a change request or a change in my docs based on the context in this ticket or the pull requests, etc. We also do have other options if you don't want to use, let's say, like the GitBook AI. If you're just using like Claude or Codex to make these changes, we also do have an MCP server and a CLI. So whatever AI agent that you want to use, you can comfortably make these changes to your docs, which is really helpful. But the third point, what I was talking about, is the guardrails aspect of it. How can you be sure that whatever AI tool that you're using is going to be able to follow a style guide or your docs and not just make a random edits to your docs? We have two different features that I'll just quickly highlight. This is something that we're currently working on right now, and we'll be rolling this out over the next couple weeks. But we basically have a style guide where you can define a full written guide that AI agents will use when they're creating changes in your docs based on whatever definitions that you set inside of here. So this is still a bit of a work in progress feature-wise. Actually, our current docs lead, Sarah, who's in the chat, has been working quite a bit on this. So if you have any thoughts or suggestions, I'm sure she'd love to hear what you think about this. But the other piece about it is if you're not using GitBook AI to make a lot of these updates, We also do have other tools if you're using like Claude or Codex, like our MCP server. We also do have a load of skills as well. You can find them on our GitHub, or you can also find them inside of our docs. Under Build with AI, we have a full section on agent skills, which basically allow you to make these updates in GitBook very easily with AI that follow, well, not only like your own style guide that you would define here, but make sure that it's using and working with GitBook the correct way with change requests and et cetera. And the last thing that I want to kind of just briefly touch on is the last piece, which is signals, which is, again, a little bit different than what I mentioned before, the feedback aspect of it. So like what's happening in your docs, what are people asking, how is the traffic looking? But it's something called like a signal from the rest of your company. What's happening in support? What's happening in a help center elsewhere? Or what's happening in pull requests? And we are working on a new feature as well called Triage, which will help you identify a lot of this stuff. So it's basically a way to take a look at the signals that are happening in other tools, like a support tool like Intercom, Zendesk, Pylon, HubSpot, etc. So that when tickets and conversations are being closed, because we have these connections with these tools, if things are identified that aren't in the docs, GitBook will basically be able to make these changes or suggest these changes to you so your docs are up to date. So again, the same kind of thing where people will ask less questions, but they'll have more answers. Hopefully, the idea here is that people will have the answer so they won't have to reach out to support, and your docs will be, again, more aligned and up to date with everything that's going on across the company. So again, the real takeaways here is kind of the workflow around how a lot of teams are working. Like a signal comes in, whether it's a PR, changelog entries, support tickets, basically anything that the docs should reflect or should be updated against, and figuring out how you can automate these signals into drafts. So in Karthik's case, again, they have a whole automation set up to help reflect these needed changes in their docs. If you're not using that, you can also take a look at the built-in tools I just showed in GitBook to reflect those. Step 3 is the part that Karthik mentioned he spends some of his time on, where a human is coming in and reviewing a lot of these things, taking a look at the contributions that are coming in and making sure that it makes sense for them to be added and that they fit the tone and structure. And again, it's making the right updates. And the 4th step is essentially publishing them and getting those live and in front of people. And the whole idea is that once these are published, these will create hopefully better signals across, again, your community inside of your support tools. And it almost works in the case of like a flywheel. If you have better docs, the whole system is essentially updated, and your docs become a better source of information for your users because they're the first thing that they will hit in a lot of cases. So I think that is kind of it for a lot of our demo, but we do, like I said, want to save some time here for some questions. I'm going to also ask for some of my team if they could send maybe a few links from some of the things that we talked about today from n8n as well. And let's then hop into some questions. So yeah, hopefully a lot of this was answered by our team, but we'll kind of take a look at some of these and go down the list and see if we can answer them. I do see one about the integrations from Joe on using Plane for a support ticket. Yeah, that's a great one. Feel free to hop into GitBooks community. We also have our community on GitHub. And we have a feature request section there. So I'm sure our team would love to hear this. Okay, awesome. It does look like a lot of these have been answered. I do have maybe just a few like quick questions, maybe a little diving into the n8n workflow again specifically.
Yeah.
My main question is, again, how your team manages such a large contribution. Because your product is open sourced and you have a lot of community contributions, I'm imagining you might see kind of a lot of spam or a lot of just the sheer quantity of updates come in. How does your team kind of manage that or take a look at that?
Yeah, so spam is an interesting one because we used to, I mean, it ebbs and flows because sometimes people commit something to our GitHub repo for some sort of GitHub karma, right? To just get started, make their first PR and everything, and we appreciate that. So we don't screen for spam using AI or anything at this point. So what we say is we mark it as the PR classification workflow that I showed you. We'll tag those PRs as needing review. So we'll come in and we'll judge each PR on its own merit, right? If we find that it's just very spammy, or if it's something that's very obviously doesn't add value to the docs, then we have another tag for it. So we just attach the tab. We attach a new label to that PR, and it just sends out a polite message that, I mean, thanks for the effort, but we aren't accepting this contribution. We also then point them to a contribution guide. But I don't think that's like a big hassle. It's like it's few and far between. Like I said, there's some seasonality to it. Sometimes kids are graduating from school and they want to just have this, create a PR or something. But it's not that it's not too crazy. What is harder is a lot of our engineers create docs as well, right? So in those sort of cases where sometimes it's the doc for a new feature, we have to understand the feature like pretty rapidly. So we have a lot of AI tools for that as well. So I think in our GitHub repo, we've got an AI agent called Cubic that basically assesses every PR, summarizes what the change was, what the impact is on the docs and everything. And we are in the process of attaching a doc style guide to that agent, so it can then judge that change against our style guide and see if it's see how big of a delta there is. And because that summary combined with the link to the actual source code helps us nail down what the effect of this doc is very quickly. So I'd like to say that it's a lot of work, but it's made it happens in a much shorter time frame than it used to because of all these tools that enable us so fast. And obviously, you have the GitBook preview, so we can check the page out, make sure there aren't crazy formatting errors that you can't really catch in the GitHub UI, right? So that just speeds up things a lot. But the workload, I feel like it's a lot of work condensed into shorter intervals, which is why I feel like the role is kind of expanding a little bit of writers. It's going beyond just writing and editing content.
Yeah, definitely. The other question I had, which would also be, I think, pretty interesting for a lot of the tech writers or even people who are kind of getting into this field that might be a little bit newer. The first question is with n8n, maybe with n8n specifically, is how far can you get without writing code? Like how easy is it for someone who doesn't know code to set up some of these workflows? And the second question would be for maybe a lot of the teams who are on this and interested in using GitBook and n8n, or maybe just more n8n for automating docs flows, because obviously your team has a very robust system. Do you have any recommendations on what a team might want to focus on first for setting up some of these signals or automations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer your first question first. So n8n is very easy to get started with. Like I had no idea of how to use n8n 8-9 months ago, and it was very quick to get started. What it needs is that you bring an idea, something that you want to automate, something that you do repeatedly. It could start with, one of the first automations I built was just send me a message to WhatsApp telling me what the weather is going to be like at 9 a.m. every day. Right. So that's an automation, because then at the heart of every automation is a trigger, which means something happened somewhere. Someone sent you a message, someone sent you an email, something happened, all right? There was an external API, there was a webhook that published a change, right? So something happened. As a result of something happening, data flowed into the workflow. Then you need to process the data. And then once it's processed, you want to publish it somewhere or print it. So it's basically every workflow can be broken down into these three kind of parts. So it's very easy to get started. In terms of where to automate docs first, right? I see these as two different buckets. The first bucket is content that is completely automatable, right? With very little intervention from a writer, where the writer is basically just doing editorial work. Those are docs that originate from the code. So there are doc strings in your source code that can easily convert into docs, or the reference pages are great, right? So we've got about 850, 900 pages of reference content in terms of node libraries, and node is one of those squares that you saw in the workflow. So each of them is a reference doc. And so right now we're in the process of publishing a workflow that will automate all of that. That's like 900 pages just spinning up on their own with no intervention at all, right? So do that first, because that's the margin for error is it's very difficult to mess those pages up. Read the code, print the docs. That's sort of it. That's all of it. And it's deterministic. That's another term I'll use, where you don't really need AI to come and do this stuff. The second part is the taste part, which is basically what you bring. And I call it taste because that's just the human thing that we can bring, where we can look at a piece of content and see, is this even understandable? It's a skill that we've been honing as writers. It's a skill that you kind of bring with you if tech writing is the field that you want to go into. Right. And for taste, you just have to understand the product, right? So dig into the product as best as you can. When you get that piece of content, then it's not so much about who generated it. Even if it's AI who generated it, or if it's another developer who generated it, it doesn't matter, because then your job is to just look at how it flows, how it's structured. That's more intervention in that part of the docs.
Yeah, super useful. Okay. I don't see a bunch more questions, so I think we're almost at time. So I think we are going to call the end of the webinar. But we are both definitely available in our respective communities, in either GitBook's community or n8n's community. So if you have any other additional questions, make sure you reach out to one of us. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. We'll have this recorded and posted within the next couple days on our events page. Otherwise, we will see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.